What's up, everybody? So, this is my review of the live action version of Lilo and Stitch. If you've seen the first one, the traditional animated version from 2002, I do not really recommend you watching this. You know, I don't know if it's just live action fatigue I have from Disney, or maybe I was just in a really, really bad mood. I don't know what the deal is, but it just everything kind of just took me out of this movie. There's some things that they do in this movie, which is basically like they took the traditional animated version, recreated it beat for beat, but then they added a bunch of things and made a couple of changes, which I don't understand why it was done. And so it ended up with me having just like a at the end of it. Like, why was this made? Like, does this movie justify its own existence, basically? And for those of you who don't know what this movie is about because you haven't seen anything, it's Stitch is this alien that has been kind of exiled from his world for being too dangerous, and he's trying to be destroyed because he's too dangerous. Ends up in Hawaii and is discovered by this little girl, Lilo, who is going through a bit of a family crisis. Her sister, is trying to be her guardian after their parents passed away. And so they're trying to deal with just that family dynamic while being investigated by the, social worker to make sure that it's a good fit for them. And then you have Stitch, with, his shenanigans. Now, the one thing that I did appreciate is that the voice actor for the traditional animated version is the same voice actor in this one. So there's some familiarity there. Okay, great. But my whole thing is it's twofold. One, stop making live action versions. I know the technology is such that you can do it, but that doesn't just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. Of all of the live action interpretations there have been, there's two and a half that I liked. I liked Cinderella. I loved The Jungle Book. I thought Aladdin was a good attempt, even though, I think one of my main gripes with Aladdin is like I felt zero chemistry between Aladdin and Jasmine. But everything else I really, really enjoyed. But all of the other ones, it's just like the only reason it exists to me is for Disney to collect more money. Because then they already have a template for what the story is, and then they have to figure out a way to, have it be digestible in a live action format. And that's just not a good enough reason for your typical, movie watcher, which I am. There's nothing special about, at least I don't think, like I'm not a critic, the way I view critics, like Roger Ebert or anybody like that. But I love movies and I do know what I like as a moviegoer, and I just don't think that I'm unique in that way. And so for this one, okay, I can appreciate, okay, beat for beat, they didn't change too much. But my main thing is like here's a perfect example of, something that, well, two moments in the movie that were completely changed, and I don't understand how that change enhances or services the story. So the first change is that in the original movie, Lilo's sister takes her to get a dog. Now, I know on the surface it sounds kind of silly, but it is a moment where it's kind of like they can bond and get to know each other and try and, continue building on their relationship after such a traumatic event. That, like, somebody else takes Lilo to get a dog, so they missed out on that moment. And then there's the other moment where it's like the most famous moment of the original, where Lilo opens up Stitch's mouth and then the music of the record player comes out of it. And in the original, you just see the sister's face and she's like flabbergasted. She can't believe what she's seeing. And so it's like one of those realization moments, kind of like in E.T. when Elliot's sister discovers ET, and they're kind of yelling at each other because they're both scared. You know, it enhances the character and enhances the stakes of what's going on in the story. In the remake, in this live action remake, it happens and the sister's just on her phone like, yeah, yeah. Like they just completely missed, that moment where the sister can be included in all of this. Now we're all in this together. We're family, you know? And so I really didn't appreciate those changes, The whole thing with it's interesting from a visual standpoint to have a live action version of something that was animated, whether it's traditional or computer animated. But just because something works in the any of the animated fields doesn't mean it's going to work in the live action field. There are certain conventions that you use in animation that you literally cannot use in live action. So the whole thing, in my eyes, is to find the essence of what makes this story tick. And really, the essence is trying to create a family bond in this chaotic and traumatic situation. And I don't think it was properly done, just my personal opinion. So I didn't really enjoy it very much. I know many people did. I'm happy that you did. I'm just not one of those people. And this movie is doing well. So that means that these reinterpretations, these live action remakes are going to continue being made. I just hope that at some point they begin to realize that, the things that were done with movies like Cinderella and with Jungle Book, they, learn the lessons from those movies and they throw away the failures of past movies that they've done. I don't need to name names because you know them. And then just make something of high quality, which is what Disney used to do for the longest time. And ever since they've been just focused on getting the bag, as the kids like to say nowadays, the product has been subpar on a consistent basis. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. What about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Smash that like button, give me a follow, and I'll see you guys next time.